Triple H and Nick Khan, a year ago, they were lockstep. They were like, he's the best, he's the best, he's the best, he's the best. This year, there's none of that.
And I do wonder how much input Triple H has into this new, goofier direction, specifically for SmackDown. Welcome back to OCG TV, and welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Diagnosis. It is Monday, so I like to go over the past week of pro wrestling and the news and everything to talk about. We just came off of a WWE PLE, even though I already covered it. But everything that's going on in the WWE lately, or at least what I've been talking about, is the more cartoonish direction that it continues to go into, like it is the early to mid-90s all over again. And is that a TKO thing? Is this how TKO thinks they can make that money right now, targeting a much younger audience for pro wrestling? That is what it feels like to me. And this is, of course, also coming off of the cuts that WWE has been putting out. Meanwhile, people at the top of TKO and the WWE are getting raises. Typical corporate stuff there, honestly. Nick Khan, one of those people, getting a raise.
Yeah, that was his base, and he got a raise and everything. But yeah, I mean, he's
now at $3 million per year.
Yeah, but that's only.
But he's in line for 150% bonuses and 200% of the base salary, and signing equity award of $11 million, and a special performance incentive of $5 million. He's doing all right.
But the question still remains: is like, where does Triple H play into this creative direction? He is supposed to be the head booker. For years now, he's been putting himself out there front and center, yes, for his ego, because he's always had a big ego, but also to say, this is my direction now. I am the one booking this company. But does he still have all that power backstage? Because things definitely changed on the road to WrestleMania. Those last few weeks, TKO seemed like they wanted more and more celebrity involvement. And I do wonder how much input Triple H has into this new, goofier direction, specifically for SmackDown. Over on the Coach and Bro show, Jonathan Coachman and Vince Russo were discussing if there is now a rift between Triple H and Nick Khan, who used to act like they were so close.
Remember we talked about the last couple of weeks who wasn't together during WrestleMania doing interviews, doing media. Remember I talked about that? Triple H and Nick Khan, a year ago, they were lockstep. They were like, he's the best, he's the best, he's the best, he's the best. This year, there's none of that.
The more interesting thing to come out of the Coach and Bros show last week was Vince Russo speculation as to why Aleister Black got the boot a couple weeks ago by the WWE, that he popped off at someone higher up because of the creative direction for him getting cut going into WrestleMania.
And again, this is just information that we're getting. Okay. Mm-hmm. I was told, bro, that the Aleister Black release was because Aleister Black popped off to somebody in management about changing the WrestleMania plans and going to McAfee.
Because he's supposed to be on the phone.
That was supposed to be Black's spot.
And I think this could be a very accurate take. I've been saying for weeks now, I don't really get Aleister Black, but I think if they would have actually built that direction for Aleister Black being the person getting into Randy Orton's head, it actually could have been really good for his character, and they really could have attempted to do it in a pretty compelling way rather than turn it into Pat McAfee randomly, and it leads to absolutely nothing. It was a waste of time. So I kind of understand that if Aleister Black really did pop off, I understand why he would have done that, because it was not a great decision in the end. And I don't really know if it really drove up those WrestleMania sales like TKO wanted it to be. Either way, the creative direction lately for the WWE has been very iffy in my opinion, as I've been covering it more the past few weeks. One thing I did enjoy the leading up to Backlash was the Jacob Fatu and Roman Reigns match. I thought they did an excellent job of actually making Jacob Fatu look like he could beat Roman, like he is the big challenger for Roman. I see a lot of people on the AEW side of podcasts, people that have podcasts but work for AEW, trying to act like the build was way too fast. And I don't know if I really necessarily agree with that.
It feels like it's just like, wait a minute, Roman just won the championship.
Yes.
He's our brand new champion.
2 weeks ago.
Why are they doing this to Jacob on he's really early in the build. Like, I think it's way early now. Where they're going with it, it's
right.
Like, I think that some of these people who were working for AEW should really focus on getting Tony Khan to focus harder on his storylines. It's funny, Jeff Jarrett talking about this, that it was too fast for Jacob, too early in the build. And it's because AEW likes to do the same kind of storylines over and over. They have loved to do the storyline that if you beat this person, that person, and this person, then you get a title shot at me. I'm glad that WWE skipped over Jacob having to go through the Usos to get to Roman. Because, first of all, we've seen that a lot with the whole bloodline in the past. I think they did it the right way with Jacob Fatu. And as much as I have actually enjoyed the Darby Allin title reign in AEW more than I thought I would, I don't think they're doing an excellent job anymore building up back to Darby versus MJF, the whole hair versus title match coming up. Because Darby Allin as a gimmick, to me, should not care more about MJF's hair than his own title. And I don't know if a character like Darby should just really care about the title either. But, like, I just don't understand the logic behind why it is so important that MJF has to put his hair on the line to get a title shot at Darby. It doesn't really fit the Darby Allin character to me. So maybe Jeff should go talk to Tony Khan about that. Speaking of goofy storylines, though, I talked about Backlash already. I talked about my thoughts on the Danhausen mystery partner being a MiniHausen, like we're doing Doink the Clown and Dink the Clown all over again. Brian Alvarez tried to make us understand why it still works.
Sometimes wrestling is silly, and it fucking sucks, okay? But if it's silly, but there's an internal logic to this silliness, well, then it's great. And you threw a little person into a fucking cloning machine. What the fuck happens? Clones come out. Crowd goes wild for these clones.
I mean, I get what he's saying. There was a logic to the storytelling, but for me, I just don't know if I want a cloning machine in my WWE PLE events, you know? I don't know if just because there is a sort of logic there doesn't mean it is good television. But they did get the crowd into that match like I talked about in my review for Backlash. You could go check out my whole review. While we're on the subject of my reviews, I do want to give my rankings on the past week of events where we had some huge changes from what I thought the week before. Because last week I put AEW Dynamite in the number 1 spot, while this past week AEW Dynamite is in my last spot in 8th place. Because this is what Tony Khan does. For weeks, I felt like the focus was getting better. We were really focusing in on the main storylines at the top of the card. Each week it was getting focused. And then this past week on Dynamite, it was a 3-hour show, but like they put no effort into making it a good television show. They really just threw out a bunch of cold matches, not a whole lot of angles throughout the night, and the crowd was dead throughout the night. And we'll get more into that after I do my rankings, because I feel like people online to stick up for AEW were trying to blame the crowd and that this place didn't sell a bunch of tickets, and that's why Tony Khan just decided to do a half-assed show. You're still a television show. You still have this TV time. Why are you taking your foot off the pedal, especially when people are turning against the WWE? Why go out there and put on a half-assed show? That's why I didn't even try and do a review for last week's Dynamite, because if they're not going to put an effort into the show, why would I put an effort in doing a review? So Dynamite falls 7 spots from first place to last place. In 7th place, I put TNA Impact, which is down 1 spot from the week before. I feel like lately TNA has been putting on these one-match shows where there's not a whole lot else going on. And I, for one, I just don't care about the system. And they tend to play a big part of TNA a lot of weeks. This was just another one-match show for me. It was the main event for the Knockouts title, Li Ying Li winning the title back. They've done a good story with her over the past few weeks. She's been devastated after losing the title, thanks to someone she thought was a friend. But the rest of the show was pretty uneventful and really not that interesting. In 6th place, I put SmackDown down 1 spot as well. I talked about this over the weekend in my review, where they actually did put effort into trying to tell stories the first half of that SmackDown episode. I feel like SmackDown is doing a pretty good job with their women's division. Fatal Influence is a big part of that, though I think they're doing an excellent job with their debut on the main roster. They're trying to tie Royce Keys to Jacob Fatu and the MFT storyline. We had a Damian Priest versus Tala Tonga match. There's things they're trying on SmackDown that are working slowly, but then we have the goofy shit with the Gingerbread Man and Danhausen throughout the night too, that on this past week just did not work for me. I still contend that the Gingerbread Man funeral was too damn cringe for me. Also, Ricky Saint's debut on the main roster is not going well. So SmackDown falls another spot for me. If we could get away from the Gingerbread Man storyline for Trick Williams and maybe go into a better, more compelling direction, I think SmackDown could easily improve, because there are story threads on that show that are working. In 5th place, I put JCW Lunacy, which is also down 1 spot in my rankings from the week before. This is the Vince Russo booked show on YouTube. For all you juggalos out there, the problem that JCW has right now is that they paid off a lot of their biggest feuds and storylines over the past month. And so I feel like now we need to see new storylines start to be built up to make me care again. They also can have too many goofy characters on one show, similar to SmackDown. And so that's kind of what happened this past week on JCW Lunacy for me. Big Vito is still the most entertaining thing in wrestling for me, though. He cracks me up every single week. Right now, they're really going for this whole mafia-type storyline with him and his nephew, and his enforcer was just in a body bag at the end of the last episode. Although I don't think he's dead. I think he was just beat up. But maybe he was dead. We'll see how the next episode goes. I enjoy JCW a lot some weeks, but other weeks it's a little too goofy for me. I hope that they can find some good storylines again to be built up and make me care more again. And that was number 4's problem the week prior for me. At number 4, I put NXT, which is up 4 spots. It was last in my rankings the week before because they've been poached of all of their top talent who are now on the main roster. And so they're in a place where they have to make the audience invest in all of these new people coming up. And that's a hard thing to do. What they've tried to do to make the show more interesting is have a lot of chaos. This week, Tony D'Angelo, who is the NXT champion, was trying to get ahead of the chaos and attack people instead of him being attacked this week. And I think that kind of worked. I don't think Tony D'Angelo is the best champion to watch. I also just feel like he's been stripped of his character over time, and it has made him a little less interesting for me. But I did somewhat enjoy the Kali Armstrong debut against Jada Parker. I think there's a lot of potential there. I know a lot of people online were hating on her finisher because it's basically like a body check in a way. But they just have to find a way to make it look better. If they can make it look more like Monty Brown's Pounce in TNA back in the mid-2000s, it's actually a great finisher. You just have to make it look visually better. But yeah, NXT, we're having a lot of people brought up. The Vanity Project now has Michael Lockwood in it, which is, it could be an interesting story in the future because she's not a looker. But there's supposed to be the Vanity Project. So I can see a really interesting potential story there in the future because she's the odd person out of that group. So NXT had a big improvement for me week to week. They still have the same old problem, though, of how you're going to make us care about all of these new people. It's a very hard thing to do. And that Mason Rook guy, who is also getting a lot of shit on social media for his look, because he's kind of overweight and just a chubby guy, a chubby old British guy. I kind of like the look. I like that he looks different than everyone else in pro wrestling right now, kind of. I think he can work too, and they obviously see a lot in him. He keeps being the guy that is attacking their world champion and getting the best of him at the end of the show on NXT this past week. So I see some potential in these newbies on NXT, but they do have a hard job of making us invested in so many new people at once. And number 3 is AEW Collision, which is up 4 spots from the week before. It was the superior show to Dynamite for AEW over this past week because it felt like there was actually an effort there. What helped, though, is that it was only an hour as well. But what also helped is that it was at the SoFi Center, which is like has this golf course type thing in it. So it made for a really interesting look. And plus the main event had them fighting at the golf course in the bunker in the sand, which I thought was also an interesting different visual for a pro wrestling show. Plus we started the night with Jack Perry losing his national title to Mark Davis, which it works for me. I think that was a good match. We got to see Mark Davis being the stronger competitor of the two. There was kind of squashes in the middle of the show. It was kind of a 2-match show. The beginning with the title change. The end with Darby Allin defending his AEW World title against Pac. But I like that they went into the sand to fight a lot. They overdid the kicking out a bit in the end because not only was Darby tombstoned on steel steps, but then he was thrown off the stairway through 4 tables. And then when he was put back in the ring, of course, Darby still kicks out. However, as I've been saying for Darby, there's way too many kickouts in pro wrestling. It's my biggest thing that I hate about modern pro wrestling because who even has finishing moves that work anymore? But Darby, his whole gimmick is that he never gives up. He just always kicks out. He's that crazy. And so it works a little better for Darby for me personally because at least it is a part of his gimmick. At number 2, I put WWE Raw, which is up 1 spot from the week before. I talked about it last week in my review, so I don't really want to talk about it too much, but I like the way they built up the Jacob Fatu and Roman Reigns feud on Raw. It helps that Raw has Roman to build that up, I think. They also had a storyline brewing with Judgment Day and Roxanne Perez that might be a long-term thing. I still think the Judgment Day is pretty stale overall, and there was some things that didn't work very well, like the Becky Lynch and Sol Ruka thing on Raw, which I already talked about. Sol Ruka unfortunately botching her move in her big debut. So Raw was a mixed bag like everything else, honestly, but it was a better watch. It seems it's a more serious show than some of the shows that I have on the bottom of my rankings, like SmackDown and JCW. Number 1 is Lucha Libre AAA AAA. It is my top spot this week. It was number 2 last week with Dynamite dropping. It's easy for me to put AAA in the first spot. I liked La Catalina's in-ring debut for AAA. I thought it was a pretty back and forth match, even though I think that her opponent Jesse Jackson actually stood out more. So that was a good match. And then we had Octagon Jr. versus Cruz del Toro versus Lince Dorado, which was it was an okay match for me. Sometimes the lucha style doesn't always work for me, similar to just having too many kickouts. But we also had the storyline with how Psycho Clown thinks that Pagano has been attacking the rest of his clown army, basically. We had some movement in that storyline with Pagano saying it wasn't him, and he can't believe that Psycho Clown actually thinks that, and then Psycho Clown was attacked by the War Raiders. Could it be the War Raiders that's doing the attacking? But we have a little bit of a mystery storyline there at AAA, and I just appreciate that it's a storyline, quite frankly. So AAA is my top spot for last week in wrestling television. If I were to put Backlash in my rankings, it would probably be between Raw and AEW Collision, because the first 3 matches on Backlash didn't really do it for me. But you could go listen to my review on Backlash. I thought Seth Rollins botched way too much in reversals for the first match to actually be good. Plus, they did the too many kickouts thing. Like, if they wanted Braun Breaker to look strong in the match, all they had to do was have Braun beat Seth Rollins with a finisher. What a foreign concept. What a concept of years past when it actually worked in pro wrestling. Anyway, a few more things before we wrap up here. Like I said, some people were trying to blame North Charleston for the AEW show being so bad and the audience being so quiet because they shouldn't sell tickets. But trying to blame the city is crazy. Why don't you blame AEW? They are the reason why they have been struggling to sell tickets for years now. And while there's finally an uptick in ticket sales, we just spent 2 years where AEW struggled to sell tickets despite having cheap tickets. And it's because Tony Khan was not doing a good enough job of making people want to attend these shows. That is what he should be focusing on. And in recent weeks, I feel like the focus was there. They kind of threw it all away over this past week when he decided to have that half-assed show. But I don't like blaming the town instead of blaming AEW for not, doing a good job of making people want to see this show. Last thing to discuss, Ted Turner passed away this past week. Obviously, a big deal in the wrestling world because he is the reason for the Monday Night Wars and wanting to go head-to-head with Vince McMahon and the WWF at the time. And, Bischoff is taking credit for the wrestling that we see today, and I think he can take that credit.
The very format that we watch today, that format didn't exist until I created it because Ted wanted to go head-to-head, and we had to do something different. Prior to Nitro, Monday Night Raw, WWF was a teen and preteen kiddie product. It targeted teens and preteens. Their entire revenue model was built around teens and preteens.
Although I will say this, it does seem like WWE is focusing on getting those preteen viewers again with the way they have been doing SmackDown. But I do understand what Bischoff is saying here. He was going after the demo that WCW was kind of ahead of its time here, going against the demo he's talking about.
And we're going to go after that 18 to 49-year-old demo because they're underserved. We can't compete with the WWE doing what they're good at, but we can sure as hell make a dent in this underserved market of 18 to 49-year-olds.
Because that demo eventually became like the most coveted demo in all of television. So Bischoff, he is a reason why WCW went off the rails by letting the NWO angle go way too far and all of that. But he is also the reason that pro wrestling became such an entertaining TV entity like it did. And WCW, thanks to him and Ted Turner, did do things that pro wrestling does today.
Live every week was a big pivot because it's expensive and it's logistically difficult. It wasn't a little thing. It was a monster move and commitment. The other one was going after the 18 to 49-year-old audience because that required a different creative approach, philosophical approach, different branding and messaging. We're going after a different audience. How do we get them?
So yeah, rip to Ted Turner. And it is interesting to me that the WWE seems to be regressing thanks to TKO, maybe coveting the preteens again. They want the toys and the shirts to sell. I do think Danhausen selling so well plays a big part of that. I just don't know if I want to continue to see cloning machines in my pro wrestling matches.